You turn my morning into dancing. Your love changes everything. There's something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes every. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dance. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. 'Cause your love changes everything. Your love changes everything. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. 'Cause your love changes everything. Your love changes everything. Oh, there's something about your love, something about your love changes everything in my body. Oh, something about your love, something about your love changes everything. It changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything. It changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything, changes everything. Something about your love, something about your love changes everything. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing. You turn my morning into dancing.
Good morning, rooted men. Pastor Tom, firmly rooted church. Today is just like yesterday, cold, cloudy, and spitty rain. Oh, man. All right. Well, make the best out of your day today. If you're living in this area, be safe as you're driving. I'm looking for a vote as to whether it is enjoyable or beneficial to have those comments in the corner, bottom corner. Just a yes or no will help us out. It's just a button for us. We just click a button saying show the comments, or we unclick it and say don't show the comments. But it would be great to see if that's any benefit to you. I'm not seeing your side of it, right? I'm seeing a control panel, and I can't see it the way you see it. So, at any rate, we're going to be looking at Jonah chapter 3, and we'll get to that in just a second. But let's take a look at who might be on board besides me out there on X. Ken Gooch, I got an official text message yesterday. Ken Gooch standing by a palm tree. So he must be someplace that's weather's nicer than it is here right now. So a little bit envious, but hoping that you and Ginger have a great time down in Florida. Chris Connolly, good morning, gentlemen. And it was great to see your bride yesterday at the meeting. Chuck B, shalom, men of God. Chris Connolly says, yeah, keep them. Okay, cool. Bert Reggiani, good morning, good morning, good morning. All right, let me pull up the reading, and let's see if I do this right this time and don't cut myself out. But before I do that, we're now here where Jonah has been in the belly of that massive fish for 3 days, and now God tells the fish, and I love the word tells him, right? Like uses his words to control the beast and spits Jonah up on the beach. And Mike Warnke, a Christian comedian from a long time ago, just when he tells this story, he tells the story of while Jonah has been in the belly of that big fish for 3 days, he's been around the acids, right? So his clothes are bleached and his hair is bleached and his skin is getting bleached white. And so he just imagines this guy coming out of this whale looking like a zombie walking into Nineveh and saying, repent, right? All bleached, all looking like a zombie. Of course they're going to repent, right? But at any rate, I just thought it was humorous. I wanted to share that with you. Hey, Steve Giroux, I see that you popped on board. Great to have you. So let me pull up the reading. We're just looking at verses 1 through 4. So let me pull it up. Come on. There it is. I got to restart my computer. I think it's a little bogged down. All right. Verses 1 through 4. Jonah goes to Nineveh. The word of the Lord came to Jonah the second time, saying, arise and go to Nineveh, that great city, and call out against it the message I tell you. Remember that movie Groundhog's Day? God is telling him the very same thing he told him in chapter 1. The message has not changed. The question is, Jonah, are you going to change? You see the point? Groundhog's days in our lives are we want something to change, but we're unwilling to change. We always want someone else to change, or God to do this with that, or change my job, or change this, or do that. But one of the last places we ever look is at ourselves, and is whether maybe we need to change, as well as something else, but are we even part of the formula? Are we part of the math formula, thinking that maybe we should change a bit as well? Jonah arose, here we go, and went to Nineveh. Ha ha, something changed. Whether he's reluctant or not reluctant, we don't know yet, but he does not get on a ship and he does not try to go the other direction anymore. He goes to Nineveh. He's obedient to God, at least externally. He's doing what God told him to do. So Jonah arose and went to Nineveh according to the word of the Lord. Now Nineveh was an exceedingly great city, violent, but exceedingly great city. 3 days' journey in breadth. It would take 3 days to walk from like one part of the city to the end of the city. Verse 4. And where am I stopping? I got to check real quick. I'm stopping at verse 4. Okay. And verse 4, Jonah began to go into the city, going a day's journey. He's been 1 out of 3 days. So let's say he's gotten through a third of the city. And he called out, "Yet 40 days, and Nineveh shall be overthrown." That's what God said. He says it exactly. He doesn't say repent. He doesn't say maybe if you repent, God might change his mind. He just says 40 days, you all die. I'm just letting you know. God says in 40 days, Nineveh shall be overthrown. Steve Drew tomorrow is going to talk about the reaction. Most importantly, the Ninevite reaction. This crazy guy comes into your city, and in one day, he is preaching a message that starts to ripple effect through the whole city. How are they going to react? What's going to happen? Because in 40 days, God has declared that Nineveh is going to be overthrown. I'll leave that at that, but come back to here and to say to you, let's just for a second go back to the first point. We need to be aware of patterns in our lives where we know what God says, we've just somehow rationalized doing it differently. We know what he says, but we either deludedly or maliciously change the way that we're going to respond to that. This what I'm saying is we don't always have to go completely the opposite direction, right? Because that's so easy to see. God told me to go that way and I went that way. But what if God tells me to do something and I just don't do it? It's called a sin of omission. I know I ought to, but I'm not. It's equally a sin to God as doing something actual. And sometimes I think we don't believe it. We don't even know it. We don't even teach our kids anymore the idea of the sin of omission. We're so focused on the sins of commission. Look what you did. Look what you did. Look what you did. But what about omission? The things you should have done. And you didn't. Why do I make that a point? Because that Mike Warnke guy, that comedian, he once made what I thought was one of the most profound statements. If I just did the do's in the Bible, I wouldn't have time to do the don'ts. Catch it? If I avoided the sin of omission and did all the loving, caring, merciful things that I ought to do in obedience to God's commandments and in obedience to his word, I wouldn't have time to commit sin because I'd be doing the things you want me to do. But if I don't do what you want me to do, man, I got too much time in my hands and I'm going to start doing things I want to do, regardless of what you say. And now sins of omission and sins of commission start to escalate. So we separate our two natures, we separate those two kingdoms, we die to the old and we feed this new individual. Why? We firmly root ourselves in God's unconditional love and his eternal truth. We feed this new individual so this new individual can rise up and live a life differently than the one that preceded. All right, I'll leave it at that. We're going to break in time for the ladies to get into their thing. I hope this devotion was a blessing to you. Have a great day. Make it a firmly rooted day, and may someone see Jesus in us today. Peace.